And so today, I want you to know that one of my favorite things to do in life, all of life, is to sit down with a person and to hear their story. Just to hear about where they came from, to hear about what type of environment and what type of circumstances made them into who they are today. You know, I find so many times in life and in our social circles, we know people at a very surface level, don't we? We know what people look like. We know what they tell us. We know what they're doing on the outside. But very few times do we actually sit down with someone and hear their story. Because every time that I've been able to do that, one of the things that I've realized is that I learned something new about them. They make more sense to me because I know where they came from. I know what type of circumstances are in their life, and I also get to hear about where they believe they want to go in the future. It's one of my favorite things to do, to go below the surface. And today, what I want to do is this. With each one of us today listening to this message, whether it's on a Sunday morning or whether you're watching or listening to this afterwards, I want us all to consider this morning, where are we? And I want us to go below the surface of our lives as we read about in this text, going below the surface of the water to find out what is happening in the life of Jonah. So Jonah chapter 2, we're going to start reading there in verse 1. We're going to read the first 9 verses of this chapter. And here's what it says. Then Jonah, listen, this is right after he has been running away from the Lord, right after he has boarded a ship to go in the opposite direction that God told him to go to. And we are going to see this once he's on the ship, a great storm comes. And then all of a sudden, the guys on the ship are wondering, who's the problem? And they figure out it's Jonah. Jonah's the problem. And so he says, you got to throw me overboard. They try to row to shore, but they're unsuccessful. The storm continues. They end up throwing Jonah into the water. This is where we pick up the story. Then Jonah prayed to the Lord, his God, from the belly of the fish, saying, I called out to the Lord out of my distress, and he answered me. Out of the belly of Sheol I cried, and you heard my voice. For you cast me into the deep, into the heart of the seas, and the floods surrounded me. All your waves and your billows passed over me. Then I said, I am driven away from your sight, yet I shall again look upon your holy temple. The waters closed in over me to take my life. The deep surrounded me. Weeds were wrapped around my head. At the roots of the mountains, I went down to the land whose bars closed upon me forever. Yet you brought up my life from the pit, O Lord my God. When my life was fainting away, I remembered the Lord, and my prayer came to you into your holy temple. And those who pay regard to vain idols forsake their hope of steadfast love. But I, with the voice of thanksgiving, will sacrifice to you what I have vowed I will pay. Salvation belongs to the Lord. Now, when we think about the story of Jonah, we are now into the most memorable aspect or situation in his life, being in the belly of the fish. But before we study about being in the belly of the fish, I want us to see something important about this text. Because the truth is this, the beginning of that prayer actually backs up before he was swallowed, right? When he was actually cast into the water. And I want you to see something that's very, very important today about this prayer that he prays to the Lord. And it's this: God listens to your prayers from the deepest valley. Listen to me today. The way we picture it in our minds, the story of Jonah, is that he was thrown into the sea and he was immediately swallowed by the fish. But that's not the image that we find in the text. It indicates that there's a time between when he was thrown into the water and when he was swallowed by the great fish. Remember how we talked last week about how when Jonah began his journey away from God, the journey was pretty easy. A lot of doors were open for him. Guess what? There was a ship at the port that was going to the exact location that he wanted to go. There was an extra ticket available. He was able to purchase it. Everything seemed to be lining up for him. But in this text, we find that the very opposite situation is now engulfing him. It's not that easy. And I want you to see, according to the text, the depths of the valley that he was currently in. There's three things about this valley that I want you to see from the life of Jonah. Number one, he was overwhelmed with the depth of the water. Did you see that? Did you see that he was saying, for you cast me into the deep, verse 3, into the heart of the seas, the flood surrounded me. Do you see that he was cast into the deep of the water? Zach and I are a part of a water fitness class together. Meets on Tuesday and Thursday mornings. If you ever want to join us, 9:30 right here at the Y. It is a workout. Let me tell you, it is a workout. You will burn a lot of calories. You will be tired afterwards. But one of the things that we do in that class is she tells us, get ready, because in 3 seconds, you're about to tread water for 1 minute. Now, even though we are not in the deep end, we're in the shallow end, when she tells me you're about to tread water for a minute, I'm not looking forward to that next minute. I'm just going to be honest with you. Because to tread water is hard work. You have to exert a lot of energy. And then she says, put your hands up in the air like you're throwing your praises up. I'm like, I don't know if I can do that right now, okay? I know I'm supposed to worship the Lord in all situations, but I'm not sure if I can get my hands up physically, okay? I want to stay alive for this situation. Treading water, though, in the pool is pretty easy because here's the situation. I know if all else fails, all I have to do is put my feet on the bottom of the pool and stand up. See, Jonah was not in a pool. He wasn't in the shallow end. He didn't have to tread water for a minute. He had to tread water for his very life. He was in the depth of the water. And I encounter people all the time that are up to their mouth in sin. They realize that there are so many ways that they have messed up. And they are about to be overcome, overwhelmed, and drowned by the sin in their life. And they're wondering, how in the world am I going to get myself out of this situation? Because I'm trying, Josh, I'm trying to do the right thing. I'm trying to rid myself of all this stuff. I'm trying to develop healthier habits. I'm trying to do this. I'm trying to do that. And to be honest with you, they're about to sink. They're at that point where they're about to sink and everything is about to be over. That is the situation that Jonah says he finds himself in. But not only is he overwhelmed with the depth of the water, but he's caught in dangerous currents. The text says that he is about to be all your waves and all your billows passed over me. It actually says in another translation that he was taken out by the currents in his life. He wasn't simply treading water in a calm and quiet place, but it has waves, it has currents. Now, this is not to say, because we know from the text, Jonah chapter 1, that when Jonah was thrown into the sea, the storm ceased. And so the storm is not going on, but think about this. When you're at the beach, it doesn't have to be storming for the water at the beach to be dangerous, right? That's why they have those flags out there. Y'all know those flags I'm talking about. So every morning you'll come out when you're on vacation, and I know some of you are sitting here right now thinking, I wish I was there instead of here, but just bear with me for just a second here. The flags, they start at green. Green means that the ocean is great, that it's going to be a good day, and then it goes to yellow, and then it goes to red, and then it goes to double red, right? And actually, in most places, double red means that you cannot get into the ocean, or they will arrest you and take you off to beach jail. I don't know what that is, But here's the situation. What they are saying is this. We realize that the currents out there are stronger than you can handle on your own. And there is a high likelihood that if you go into the water, just even at waist deep, maybe even if you're in good shape, that the current is going to be so strong, even though the sky is blue, the current is going to be so strong and going to take you out so far that you're going to lose your life. And the truth is, we don't have enough lifeguards. We don't have enough guys in boats to be able to rescue everybody. So we're going to warn you and say, stay out of the water. Jonah was in a double red that day. He was in the middle of that situation. He was always having to worry about what is going to pull on me, what's happening in my life. And just when it seemed like, man, I just have to tread water, the water is really deep, then the current comes, then another wave hits him. You know the phrase, the hits just keep on coming? Have you ever heard that? You know, it's kind of like the idea that in your life, something bad goes wrong. It may be a result of a sinful situation that you've put yourself in. It could be something completely disassociated from that, right? And so you get one thing and one thing goes wrong in your life, and then a couple of days later, something else goes wrong. A couple of days later, something else happens. You know, I think about, there's no formula for this. There's not necessarily a predictor for when this will happen. I think about in January of 2020. My wife and I were in Nashville, and we had dinner together, and we said together, hey, we want to together commit to the Lord, to say, God, whatever you want us to do with our lives, even if it is planting this church in Memphis, Tennessee, a massive leap of faith, we are willing to do it. God, we're willing to do it. Our yes is on the table. We surrender to you. On that same trip, just a day after that, we got a phone call. We had to rush back to Alabama to where our kids were, where Mallory's parents were, and found out that Mallory's mom had a brain tumor that was the size that was so dangerous that it had to be immediately removed. And so by God's grace, we saw her recover from that. And about a month and a half later, we were sitting in my parents' living room here in Memphis with both of her parents and with my parents and with some of our other family. And we shared with them, we said, hey, we believe God has called us to Memphis. And on that same trip, Mallory found out that she was pregnant. And just a few days later, we experienced the difficulty of miscarriage. And it seemed like, God, we said yes to you. We said that we would do this. And yet it seemed like wave after wave was coming at us. It seemed like all these things were happening. Since that time, there's been other tumors in our family, and it seemed like, God, what are you doing? There's so much that's coming in our life. Why is this? What's going on? And so I understand and can relate with what Jonah is going through in this moment. There's a third thing, though. He's also being strangled by the weeds. Because of the storm that's just happened in that area, it probably stirred up a lot of seaweed in the water. You've probably been at the beach and been in the water after a storm. There's a ton of seaweed that's been stirred up. Well, obviously, this is the situation. So he was in the middle of the deep water with waves and currents all around him. And also, the worst thing that could possibly happen when you're in that situation is for something to wrap itself around your head or neck. Right? I mean, it's like, hey, come on now. This is not a good situation. And now the weeds, now I got the weeds, and they're about to strangle me and to pull me down. The scripture says the weeds covered his head. He might have been unable to see the waves that were coming because he had them covering his eyes and his face. You think about the situation that he is in with those weeds. When I think about the weeds, be honest with you, I think about the unnecessary things in our life that are sent to distract and to tempt us. They are sent in the middle of a crazy world, in the middle of hardship and temptation and trial and difficulty, in the midst of people that we can't trust and people that continually let us down. Then there's all this distraction that comes into our life. And I want to paint a picture that maybe will help to explain what I'm talking about. Callie, can you hand me this right here? I got a special thing. Here's the truth, y'all. We got ants at our house. We got ants, all right? Just found them this weekend. So as any man of the household, what I wanted to do, of course, was get rid of said ants. That's my one job, okay? I only have one job. That's my job for this weekend. We called our pest control, but because it's the weekend, they can't come till tomorrow, right? They can't come to, they're not working on the weekends. They come tomorrow. So guess what? I'm the pest control for this weekend. So like any other good, father and husband, I'm going to Home Depot, all right? And I'm checking out all of their ant traps. And I happen to get these right here. Now, this is not a commercial, but if they want to pay our church for this commercial, that'd be fine. We'll put it to the general fund of our budget, okay? But here's the deal. I realized something important. My wife said, hold on. We got all these ant traps out, and they're attracting all these ants. And we're like, oh, but they're still alive. What's going on? We got these ants are still crawling. They're still everywhere. They're in our kitchen. That's the worst place. You don't want them there. You don't want them there. What's going on? And, after I put out these traps and had bought them, I read the directions because that's, the normal order of things, right? And so I read the directions, and this is what it says. Listen to me. It says that the liquid poison inside of these traps will attract the ants. It smells and looks good to them. And it says the poison is specifically crafted to not kill them on contact, but it wants them to make contact with the poison and be able to take it back to their colony of the rest of the ants and infect other ants, and then they will die there. That's what it's crafted to do. And as I was thinking about this, is that not the exact same situation as the sinful distractions and temptations that Satan puts in our path? They look good. They smell good. They're alluring. And we go and we get them. And we're like, I need this. I want to do this. I'm going to be about this. And we're like, hey, I'm not dead. But slowly, over time, it kills you softly. And not only do those distractions and those temptations affect you, but it affects those around you. Remember last week, we talked about Jonah's sin put the other men on the boat in danger. Remember that? And so I think about it. These weeds are coming in around him. This is the situation that he's in. This is what he's going through in his life right now. He is at the bottom. He is in a valley. But I want you to know this. Do not miss this. Because some of you listening today, you may be in a valley that is very comparable to what Jonah was doing. You may not actually be in the ocean. You may not actually be in a current. You may not actually have weeds surrounding your head, but metaphorically you do. I want you to know this. It does not matter where you are. If you call out to the Lord, He will hear your prayer. I read one commentator that said this way about this passage: prayer from the depths will be heard in the heights. What an amazing message. That even though Jonah was in the wrong, that in his greatest moment of need, in his moment of actually about to pass away, that God heard him, that God cared for him, that God wanted to provide a rescue for him. Listen to me. If you are right now in a valley, call out for the Lord. Call out to him. He will hear you. He will respond. Second thing I want you to see from this text is this. Not only about the prayer that he prays in the valley, but I want you to see that God is more interested in your rescue than your comfort. I want you to look at the end of verse 6 here. The text says, "Yet you brought up my life from the pit, O Lord my God. When my life was fainting away, I remembered the Lord, and my prayer came to you into your holy temple." Do not miss this. The rescue for Jonah in the midst of the ocean was actually being swallowed by the fish. Did you see what he just said? He just said that my rescue was actually being swallowed up by the fish because he was about to drown otherwise. And so instead, he was actually swallowed by a fish. Because remember, at the time of this prayer, Jonah had not experienced the fish spitting him out. So that wasn't the rescue that he was talking about. He wasn't saying that you have raised my life up from the pit by the fish spitting me out. Because when he was praying this prayer, he was in the belly of the fish. There was some sort of rescue that happened before he got spit out. We think, oh, when the fish spit him out, that was God's rescue. No, it was before that. And here's the thing. When Jonah's strength was gone, when he was saying, man, I'm trying to get out of the depths on my own, God was saying, you can't do it. You can't do it. I'm going to have to send a rescue. God, these waves are crashing in. The currents are pulling me out. The weeds are around my head. I'm trying to get out. I'm trying to do all this. He was saying, you can't do it on your own, but I can. And I am going to appoint a fish to swallow you. Verse 17 of chapter 1. And the Lord appointed a great fish to swallow up Jonah. And Jonah was in the belly of the fish 3 days and 3 nights. Hold on, Josh. This does not sound like a very good rescue. You mean to tell me that God rescued Jonah by having him be swallowed by a fish? That Josh, I don't know what you're doing today or what you're thinking about, but Josh, you have messed up in your study. This is not a rescue. This is not something that any of us would consider a rescue. But think about this. Jonah found himself in one of the most uncomfortable places, in the belly of a fish, for 3 days. But God placed him there on purpose. It was not an accident. It was not a mess up. It was not a coincidence. God rescued him in this specific way on purpose because he wanted to help Jonah remember, and he wanted to help Jonah learn. And it took this situation, and I want you to ask yourself this question. What are the seasons or the moments of your life when you have learned or grown the most? Can you think about that? Think about the seasons of your life when you have learned the most or grown the most in your life. I don't know about you, but I think if we were to take a poll around the room today, that we would probably come up with this unlikely truth. Some of the most uncomfortable times in our life have been the times when we have learned the most and grown the most. The times of comfort, the times of ease are good, and all of us like that. But the truth is, when we are in the valley, we have nowhere to look but up, right? And we see God for who he is. And we see his hand at work more than we do sometimes on the mountaintops. That's not because of him, that's because of us, right? Our posture is we're going to look up. We have to look up. So I want you to see three things about this uncomfortable rescue that we find in the text here. The first is this: sin is messy. Seems obvious, but sin is messy. Some people think that when you're rescued by God, you are whisked away to a 5-star resort where all your problems disappear and you can relax oceanside listening to a beautiful band playing the best island vibes that you can possibly imagine. But the reality is this: when we see the rescue of God, we still deal with both the consequences of sin and the temptation to sin. We still deal with that every single day. I have a friend of mine who was convicted of third-degree murder. And he would regularly admit to you very openly that he shot and killed a person. And he would say that it was because he was defending someone else. But the evidence just wasn't there. So we went to trial, he was convicted, and he was sentenced to prison for many years during the prime point of his life. Watch this. In prison, he met Jesus. In prison, he surrendered his life over to the Lord. The people that he was hanging out before, the stuff that he was doing before, that was no longer a priority for him. He started leading prison Bible studies. He started leading other prisoners to the Lord. He didn't get out of prison once he prayed a prayer. He stayed in prison. And by the way, that was the most uncomfortable place he could ever imagine being. The threat of violence was every day. I mean, every single day, he had to worry about, is someone going to hurt me or harm me? He had to sleep in an uncomfortable place. He had to be behind bars. He had to have all these things said to him and done to him. He was incredibly comfortable, but don't miss this. That was God's rescue for him. That was God's rescue in that prison. And we should never think in our life that sin is anything other than messy. It's messy. It can lead to some incredibly bad places, bad situations. Some of you right now know exactly what I'm talking about because you're dealing with the lingering consequences of something that you've done in your past. And you carry it with you right now. And the truth is, even though we have a rescue, there can still be that uncomfortableness because sin is awful. Now, we are no longer chained to sin. We are definitely not defined by our sin, but it's messy. It's awful. It's gross. And in the belly of the fish, that was not like a clean and sterile environment, right? That wasn't a 5-star hotel that he stayed in for 3 days and 3 nights. It was incredibly messy inside that fish. Second thing that we see in the text is that selective seclusion is helpful. Jonah was completely alone with God in the belly of the fish. He was completely secluded from all others. God did not want anyone else to speak into his life during this moment. He wanted Jonah to think the same thing that is written by the psalmist in Psalm 46:10, "Be still and know that I am God, that I will be exalted among the nations. I will be exalted in the earth." We know he did that. You know how? Because look at his response in verse 8. His response was, "Those who pay regard to vain idols forsake their hope of steadfast love." Basically saying this, he was just on a boat, if you will remember, with other guys that were calling out to other gods. And their other gods gave no response back. There was no hope that was given by all of those vain idols. But they pinpointed Jonah and said, hold on, maybe Jonah's the problem. Maybe we should call out to Jonah's God. Maybe we should do what Jonah's God says, and they immediately cast him into the water and the storm stopped, realizing that that was God's response to them. And so Jonah was right then realizing, hey, there is a real God. There is a higher power here. His name is Jehovah. And there are times in our lives where the best thing that we can do is get alone with God. I'm talking about getting away from people, but I'm also talking about getting away from the noise in life. I'm talking about silencing the notifications. Can I get an amen? I mean, my goodness, there are so many notifications. Ding, 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 ding. I mean, my goodness. How are we supposed to get anything done with all of those dings? How are we supposed to get anything accomplished if all we're dealing with is a steady stream of notifications? We got to take the headphones out. Sometimes I'm seeing people, they're on their headphones all the time. Got their AirPods in all the time. I mean, we're working out here, they got their AirPods in. They're walking to the bathroom, they got their AirPods in. I can't ever talk to them because they constantly got somebody talking to them in their ears. They're not connecting with other human beings. They're just listening to who knows what. People wearing them in their cars. I don't know. I guess they don't have a stereo in their car anymore. I'm not sure. You see people out walking at the park. Everybody's got them in their ears. We got to take those out sometimes. We got to get our head out of a screen and we got to turn it off. I don't know if y'all know it. The phones and stuff, they got off buttons. I don't know if we know that. I had somebody, no lie, said to me a couple of weeks ago, a lady who was crying to me. She said, my boyfriend and I, he won't do anything with me if it doesn't involve a screen. What an indictment on us that we're not even connecting with the people that are right in front of us. I know what you're all thinking. You should have said, break up with the boy. And that's the next step, okay? That's what needs to happen, obviously. But here's the truth. That's happening more than we want to admit. And we got to take some time and we got to seclude ourselves so that we can hear from the Lord, so that we can hear who He is. But notice this. I don't believe that we should live our lives in seclusion. I said selective seclusion for a reason. Because we need a healthy balance in our life of time alone with the Lord so that we can hear from Him and learn from Him and grow in Him. But we were made for community. We were not created for isolation. We were created to do life with other people. We see that from the beginning of creation when God says, let us make man in our own image. If God had a community, the Trinity, we probably need a community too, right? But selective seclusion is helpful. Lastly is this. Salvation is exclusive. Verse 9. But I, with the voice of thanksgiving, will sacrifice to you what I have vowed I will pay. Salvation belongs to the Lord. Watch this. The only way that he was going to get out of the belly of the fish alive was by the salvation of the Lord. The only way that he could find true forgiveness in his life is by the Lord. The only way that he was going to be able to have purpose in his life was the salvation from the Lord. It was not with the other gods. It was not with the other vain idols. It was not with his own path that he wanted to chart. It was only in the Lord. And in that moment, Jonah realizes that salvation belongs to no one else but the Lord. And so the only possible way that we can experience a rescue is not by behavior modification, but it's by a heart transplantation that God takes our old heart of stone and sin and replaces it with a brand new heart. That is what we need. That is our greatest desire. And it's not just for us in the room. It's for any that would call on the name of the Lord and believe. It's for anyone. And so today, I want us to see, and I want us to make sure we understand these two things, that no matter how deep in a valley you are, that God listens to your prayers from the deepest valley. And second of all, I want you to see that God is more interested in your rescue than your comfort. Because the greatest thing that you need in your life is not comfort, it's a rescue. You know, this past week, I got a message online from a guy that lives close to our house that we visited right before Easter. And when we visited him, we just shared with him who we were, where we lived, and that we were a part of a church plant in East Memphis, and we'd love to invite him to come and be a part. And he said to us on his front doorstep, he said, I'm agnostic, but I might come and check it out. So I wrote him a handwritten card and put it in the mail, and I just followed up with him and said, hey, we'd love to have you sometime. Here's where we live. If we can ever do anything, pray for you. Please let us know. And he sent us a message on Tuesday, and he basically said, I will not be attending your church because I do not agree with what you believe. And he went on to say something like this: I hope to sometime find a religion that is most comfortable for me. That's what he said. And I just want you to know, my opinion of that guy doesn't change a bit. I believe that Jesus can and wants to rescue him as much today as ever before. But I also want you to know this: comfort is not the greatest virtue in life. It is not the greatest season. It is not the greatest value. It is not the greatest aspiration. And when it comes to a relationship with God, we are told throughout the New Testament that there will be many times that are not comfortable. There will be times of testing. There will be times of trial. There will be times of failure. There will be times where people will hate us on account of Jesus. And so I want you to know this: in a world that values comfort over everything else, we have a different message. We have a message that values rescue over anything else. And at the end of the day, that's what people actually need. Amen? Let's pray.